Have you experienced moments where it just feels like your life is falling apart, right? Like everything is just crumbling around you, and yet somehow you know, like there's a part of you inside that knows that there's a reason for that, like that knows that it's not something random that's happening for you just because. Yeah, I think that really uh, you know, we don't know from the start that we are living someone else's life a lot of the time. We are wearing these masks, these social masks, these masks to make ourselves seem more um, presentable or acceptable to the world. And we don't realize that we can end up forming our identities around that. That we can end up in lives that don't fit us at all, that are not the lives that we're supposed to lead. And yeah, that can cause huge havoc in our lives, right? It can cause complete upheaval of everything that we believed, everything that we have, everything that we've been going for. And that can feel like so scary. And there's even points like I've experienced in my life points that um, where my life felt like it was breaking apart, but not in a way that I wanted. Like I didn't want these things to be happening to me. I wanted to keep living my little oblivious life or whatever. And yeah, but like things just started crumbling around me. And yeah, it made me start seeing the issues because this is what happens. Okay, so when we are growing up, we develop this sort of social self or persona or mask, whatever you want to call it, right? Where we develop a protective sort of self that aims at things like approval or belonging. We want to belong. We are social creatures. Like belonging is a survival instinct for us. And so we develop these personas to appear more palatable, basically, to our world or more acceptable and get the friends we want to get, the partners we want to get, the jobs we want to get, the material goods we think we want, right? And that can all be part of this persona building, right? If you choose a persona of somebody with a lot of money, and that's how you think you're going to get around in the world by having a nice car, and that'll get you all of the attention from potential partners and your friends. You'll have more friends because people will want to hang out with you because you can buy them things. Yeah, and then you might be gunning for that big job, the corner office, whatever it happens to be, because you think that is going to bring you safety, acceptance, and belonging. And that might work for a little bit, right? It might get you like partway there, but I think at some point things start to break down and reality starts to show itself. And for me, this happened actually quite a few times. And I was not gunning for those kinds of things. I just wanted mostly to be accepted and to belong and to fit in. And maybe this was exacerbated by the fact that I am neurodivergent. And so I spent my whole life sort of watching, like people watching and trying to adapt and trying to understand what people wanted from me and trying to understand how to be pleasing, how to be accommodating, how to make people like me, and and also how to kind of find my place in the world, whatever, wherever that happened to be. And when I came out of university, when I finished university, which took me forever, I dragged it out because I did not want that part of my life to end, the school part. Like I love learning, I loved being a student, I loved the flexibility of it, how I only had a few hours of lecture per day and a little bit of homework here and there, but for the most part, I was free around that. And that all changed when I got my first full time job. And this was like in my early mid 20s ish. And yeah, something that happened shortly after that is that I started experiencing high levels of anxiety. Like, and I'm talking high, like, I'm talking panic attacks, unable to sleep, major insomnia, just yeah, just my life slowly crumbling because of it, because I was not able to perform the way that I could, usually, or be the person that I was trying to be or trying to fake being. And things just started to crumble. And the breaking point really for me was when I ended up injuring myself. And yeah, it just made everything so much harder, right? So all of a sudden I was having to do everything I had to do before, but now getting around was really hard because I had a fractured ankle. And so yeah, the crumbling that was already happening before started, like, it's kind of like it was fast tracked, and before I knew it I was completely unable to function, and ended up taking leave from work for a little bit. And at the time, this was the first time that this happened to me, that I was really in this position of, yeah, complete panic, and I didn't understand what was happening. And yeah, I blame the job, the environment, the fact that I had not received adequate training. I found all the excuses, all the try to logical reasons for why this had happened, because again, I didn't understand what was happening. I went to the doctor. They said, "You have generalized anxiety." And I was like, "That sounds good to me, right? Like, thank you for telling me what was wrong with me." And yeah, it just like, there was really scary moments during that phase before I went on leave, where I remember at some point like driving my car to work and all of a sudden feeling depersonalization, which is kind of like, yeah, it felt like I was like, I'd left my body and I was watching myself, but I no longer had control, which was really, is really scary when you're driving in traffic, right? Because I just kind of felt like, oh, if my body were to decide to just like turn the wheel and crash, I don't know if I could stop it. So these are the kinds of moments that led to me going on leave, because I really felt, yeah, I really felt like I was out of control. And like I said, I blamed the job. I blamed the stress of it. I blamed, oh, maybe this isn't right for me. And that was probably the closest question I got to it. But at the time, I was unable to focus on anything else except the crippling anxiety, and sort of the anxiety that I had also about the anxiety, if that makes sense. So I was really afraid, for example, to just go out of the house, even though I lived miles away from anyone that I worked with. I was somehow afraid that they would be roaming around my neighborhood, see me, and be like, "You're not sick. Why aren't you at work?" You know, and yeah. And just, I was still trying to hide it at the time. I was trying to pretend that this wasn't happening. And I also felt very victimized by my anxiety. Like, I kind of felt like, why is this happening to me? Why? And I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And, you know, eventually I was like, okay, well, I'm going to move away from the city. I'm going to go live somewhere a little bit more quiet, and I'm going to try this adulting thing again, right? Try to find another job and trying to find another way to earn living and start over. And I did. And guess what happened? I went back, and again, I put on my mask, tried to be the perfect little employee, follow the rules, be pleasant, be accommodating, be all of that. And yeah, I went into burnout again after a year and a half about. Yeah, I was just completely out of juice. And yeah, I was off for a little bit. More questioning happened then, and it got a little bit deeper. And there are certain things that I realized about myself at the time that did help a little bit. And then I got another job. Lo and behold, again, the same thing happened. And this time I actually left this job spilling everything at the end. So I had held back inside all of this anger and all of this kind of like, yeah, all of these comments that I'd wanted to make, all of these issues I'd wanted to bring up that I just didn't. I just kind of kept it all inside because I didn't want to disturb the peace, or I didn't want to risk upsetting anyone. And yeah, I had this very uh, comfortable, in a sense, very uncomfortable, comfortable persona and mask of being the easy one. Again, like the one who just, I follow all the rules, I do good work, I don't complain, I don't take up my manager's time with my issues. And I'm so easy. I'm so easy. Like, everybody just loves me and it's great and everything. But yeah, again, I ended up leaving that job. more or less willingly because of the same thing. I just burned out again completely just by never speaking up and never, yeah, never kind of allowing myself to, yeah, like be myself essentially at work and talk about the things that I didn't agree with and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, like this sort of crisis that kept happening. And this is what it feels like, I think, when, and some people might catch on faster than I did. It took me a while, obviously. But yeah, this is like, I kept feeling every time that this happened, I felt like my life was crumbling. I felt like, what is happening? Why does this keep happening? And why can't I stop it, right? Like, why do I keep repeating this pattern? And obviously, like, this was not a fun pattern to live through. And every time, like I said, I had anxiety about the anxiety. I didn't want to be seen. I felt so embarrassed. I felt so, and like, when I was growing up, just mental health was not something that my parents looked at. Like, it was not seen in a positive light. And yeah, so it just, I felt like so embarrassed, I guess, about that issue within myself that I just couldn't seem to just be like everybody else and just get up and be fine and speak my mind. And yeah, I don't even think that the speak my mind thing even came into play at this point, but it did, like, after three times is the charm, right? And after three times of this happening, I started thinking maybe it's not the job. Maybe it's something about me. And in this third job in particular, this was a job that I actually quite enjoyed. I liked the work. I liked the rhythm of it. I was able to work from home. So there was a lot of it that, in a sense, did help because it got me a little bit closer to, I think, what was best fitting for me. And, but nevertheless, that crisis really did affect me. But I started realizing that maybe the issue, again, was not the jobs. It was not all of that. It was within me. It was, and I'm not saying like anything is wrong with me, nothing like that. That's not what I mean. It's more that there was something that I was repeating. Like, I was the common denominator in all of those situations. I was the one who somehow ended up self-sabotaging myself. And at first that was kind of like a harsh realization until I started realizing much later that actually that self-sabotage was trying to do me a favor. And that's kind of what like is what I was referring to at the beginning, that sometimes when your life is crumbling, when it feels like your life is falling apart, it is actually for your benefit because you were just not in the place that you were meant to be. And for myself, for example, like, I highly believe that I'm a creative who's just never allowed herself to be a creative. And I'm starting to now. And I did have like a brief little musical career for a bit. I did sing, and that was fun. But even there, I feel like I was still showing up as my masked self. So I was never fully able to express myself, even in the arts. And that was a problem, right? Like, that was a huge problem. And if you're in a similar situation, there's a very good chance that you've confused your social self or your persona or your mask for who you truly are. But if things like this keep happening to you, there's a very good chance that you're in a similar situation and that you actually not need to start unmasking or realizing at the very least that there's a very big difference between that person, that persona that you're putting out there to be accepted, to keep your job, to, have reasonable interactions with the cashier at the store, all of that. But and like the persona or like the mask can be useful in certain situations, right? It's not in and of itself, it's not bad. It can be very useful. It can be a very useful thing to have a hold on, to have a mask, because we live in a social world, and so sometimes we do have to interact with strangers, and you might not want them to know who your true self is necessarily. You might not have that that inclination with every, like, it's a lot of work to show up as yourself in a sense, or well, I mean, more or less, but there is a lot of vulnerability in it. But where it becomes a problem, and it was a really big problem for me, is that it's more with like people that you interact with every day. So, your friends, your family, even your coworkers to an extent. Sorry. But yeah, like it just, if you identify too much with the persona, it starts directing, you start making decisions from that place. And again, you're not living your life, you're living someone else's life, right? Whether it's a character on TV that you admired as a kid, or a parent, or another family member, or a friend of the family, somebody that you admired maybe, or just a specific role or specific, right? Like, and it's not you, it's just something that you picked, that you were like, I'm gonna go and be that. But you already are someone, like you were born with a true self. You were not, at least that's what I believe. I don't think we come in here empty blank slates. I think we do come in and we kind of have, yeah, there's like a core self that either is whole as we come in or develops as we live, whatever it happens to be, it's there. And I think it's always there. And it's the truest part of us, honestly. It is sometimes what does cause us harm, like not, hopefully not big harm, like me spraining my ankle or whatever. That's relatively small, so hopefully nothing too big. But it depends how desperate it is, right? How desperate it is to get you back to yourself, because yeah, I think there's something so corrosive about living our lives as somebody else and not being ourselves, because you came here to be you, right? Like that's why you're here. And so yeah, like just trying to live behind that mask it's not going to work long term. And I think we start realizing that when our lives begin to fall apart, and when the masks start breaking, or you start being able to see from the back end almost, right? Like you start having that awareness of the mask or the persona, and you start being like, oh, look at what I do. And for me, like a big piece of that was, and I used to call myself a chameleon, because I recognized that what would happen when I met people and developed acquaintances or relationships with people, I would first kind of study them. I would show up like as my masked self, kind of like the bland model, the like base model, masked self, and then I would learn about them and kind of like study what they liked, the positive responses I got to them, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would kind of build like a custom made mask for each individual. And so that's why I called myself a chameleon. I felt like I was changing personality based on who I was around. And when I started recognizing that, like it kind of broke the fourth wall, right? Like when you start being like, oh, I am acting, like I am not being myself in that. Oh, and there too. Oh, and there too. And you start kind of picking up. And that's what I mean by like the mask starts to break. It starts like you're not convinced anymore. You start seeing through your own BS, basically. And yeah, I think that's when you slowly start returning to yourself, because the one that is seeing that is your true self. It's the one in the back. Like it's usually a very quiet presence, but it's aware. It's there. And so when that starts happening, when you start to grow that awareness and pay attention to it, that is when things start to get interesting. And this is when I think you start to transition between the mask. And like I said, you can keep wearing the mask in certain situations where appropriate, so long as you understand that is not me. That is the persona that I need to use in this instance. But, you definitely shouldn't or wouldn't be wanting to use that in situations where you're trying to develop a friendship or a relationship or a partnership, all of that, right? Because like, and this is what I found out the hard way, when you do that, when you make that the base, like the foundation of these relationships, they end up being very meaningless, and like you don't want them, because like that means that instead of chilling out at home playing Animal Crossing and having fun or whatever you do for fun, knitting or reading, and just being yourself in your pajama pants, you have to go, and you have to go like play a role for a few hours. And so relationships in general for me became something I didn't want to do anymore, because I was like, well, no, like why would I want to do that? Why wouldn't I just stay at home instead of like pretending for 2 hours? Because that was like super exhausting. It's super exhausting, I think, to not be yourself all the time. And so, yeah, I think that when you start having that awareness, it's like, it's a great place to be, even if it can feel very scary and disorienting. And again, like your life is falling apart, because I feel like for a really long time, it felt like my life was falling apart until I ended up with like, not nothing, but kind of like a blank slate almost, where there was very, after I kind of sifted through everything and pulled out everything that didn't fit anymore, that never fit probably, I was left with like very, very little, like a very minimalistic life in a sense, where, but like that's great, because that blank slate allowed me to then have space to welcome things that were a lot more me. So things like colors came back into my life, things like comfortable clothes that I feel comfortable in, stuffed animals, just, yeah, just all of these things that I'd kind of, and like there was even a phase where I got rid of all my stuffed animals in my early adulthood, because again, like you're not supposed to have those as an adult, but now I'm just like, I'm fully embracing it, honestly. Like I love their squishiness, and I love how cute they look, and yeah, I love the brightness of them. And yeah, it's not just stuffed animals, it's like figurines and Funko Pops and just everything that sort of brings me joy. And yeah, slowly letting in those things about yourself again. And it is like, it's honestly, it's life changing. And that's just kind of like almost the superficial side of it, which is great. It is great. It's a great start for sure. But I think there's definitely a lot more to it. And that's kind of the phase that I'm entering now. So I have become aware. I have done a lot of work on becoming myself and reconnecting to that true core self. But now I've been kind of doing that in a vacuum, and now I'm wanting to figure out how to make that work with the outside world. Kind of figure out how to be that person and re-enter the world. And part of that for me has been trying to start a business, trying to figure out what kind of business I could start. And then while building that too, figuring out, okay, well, what would a business that's built for me look like? And so that's like a whole new set of questioning that I've kind of talked about in my other videos, that is very interesting and kind of like a little bit scary too to do, because it's instead of following someone else's path now of just being like, okay, well, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm just going to go get a teaching degree, do whatever I need to be a teacher, and then start teaching, right? Like very clear path, very like more or less, right? But I just mean like it's a path that's pre-written that I can just, start, and there's a finish, and there you go. I'm all set. I'm a teacher now. And that might be your true path, and that's great if it is. But for me, I do feel like as much as I love education, and I actually kind of like love sharing what I learn, and through, I don't know if it's teaching so much as sharing, but yeah, like it is something that I know about myself, but that I would not be suited to be a teacher. And so like little things like that start becoming clearer. And the clarity is great in a sense, because it narrows down your options, but at the same time that narrowing can feel a little bit scary once again, because you're kind of like, ooh, like what's left, right? If I'm knocking out all these things, then what's left? But I think in the end, it's going to be all the more worth it. And if you're on a similar path right now, I hope that you're feeling the same way. Or if you haven't reached that point yet, I'm telling you that I'm at this point now where I'm really seeing this is going to be so good long term, because I know the alternative. I know what it's like to constantly feel in this panic state and just feeling like there's a part of me rebelling against my own life, which is, not a very pleasant feeling. And I always come back to this quote by Carl Jung that says, we all walk in shoes too small for us, meaning that we all kind of squish ourselves into these roles, right? Again, because of fear, because we want to belong, because we want approval from the people around us, whatever it happens to be, right? And I think fear is a really big part of it, unfortunately. And yeah, so we squish ourselves. If you imagine wearing shoes that are too small for you, like, it's very uncomfortable. Your toes are all squished in. When you take off your shoes when you get home, your feet hurt, your toes hurt. And so it's very painful to live that way. And I think how we start wearing shoes that fit us, or that are, the right size, is kind of what I've already said. It's through awareness, right? A big part of it is awareness and starting to reconnect with that true self. I think a part of it too is setting boundaries, which is, very much connected to the true self, because they're just things that you realize, like for me, I don't think working in an office is something that I can do. That's like kind of a hard boundary for me. And I've been working from home for many years because, this sort of realization and becoming is not something that has happened all at once, right? It has been very gradual. It's been like one discovery at a time sort of deal. Sometimes two if I'm lucky. But yeah, so setting boundaries is a big one. And last one is authenticity, right? Just being yourself and letting yourself be yourself, no matter how weird that seems. And, I think we're all so afraid before we step into authenticity. I think we're so afraid of being ourselves because we think nobody's going to accept us. But a really interesting concept that I kind of was reminded of while doing a business course recently is that if you try to sort of market yourself for everyone, you will attract sort of like no one. Like, right, it's kind of this idea of niching down, but if you try to be for everybody, you're for nobody. Whereas if you kind of, narrow it down to being for a certain set of people, you will attract a smaller group of people, but they will be so much more in alignment with you. And I think it's the kind of the same thing on a broader scale with your life and your personality and your authenticity, is if you try to do what I did and be liked by everybody and be pleasant to everybody, you end up erasing yourself entirely. And no one really, people may like you, but like nobody will love you, or like you will not feel loved by anybody, not truly, because they don't like the real you. They like this facade, this mask. They like this unreal version of you. Whereas if you show up as your authentic self, yeah, like a lot of people might not vibe with that. A lot of people might not like you. But the people that do are going to truly like you, and you're going to feel that at your core. You're going to be like, oh, this person actually likes me, not this version of me that I'm pretending to be. And I find that so much more powerful. So like, that's your target audience, your target people, like the people, and you don't need to target them. I think they'll just get naturally sifted out by your energy and what you put out there. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up this video here, because I realize I've been blabbing for a little bit, but yeah, if your life is falling apart, it might actually be trying to help you. It might actually be trying to realign you to the path that you're meant to be on, to your authenticity, to your true self. And that is so good. And so if you are in the midst of all of that, if you are kind of facing this phase of your life where everything feels like it's crumbling, everything's falling apart, everything feels wrong and uncomfortable, I'm telling you, hold on and try to go within, try to listen to that voice within, instead of looking for doing what you've always done and looking outside of yourself for approval and guidance and asking all your friends, for their advice. Look within and just ask yourself. And it's the language of the self is very, very subtle. Like it's like almost like a little whisper, and you have to, it's more like of a feeling, right? What feels good and what feels less good, and what feels like it's going to cause you to grow, and like what feels like it will enlarge you rather than diminish you is a really good place to start. When you think about making a decision, think, will this enlarge me or will this diminish me? Will this put me in a pair of shoes that fits me, or am I walking in shoes too small for me? So that's it for today. As always, thank you so much for listening. And if you want to follow for more, I will be posting again very soon. But yeah, until then, see you later. Bye.